Good evening, everybody. We are so glad that you are here this evening. We've got a wonderful program for you. We will be speaking with our district court judicial candidates for 10F seat 1. That's a mouthful, but that's what it is. And then we will be speaking with our district attorney candidates. My name is Kevin Creech. I am chair of Wake County Democratic Party, and welcome, welcome, welcome. I'd like to also introduce a few folks who are here with me this evening who have been assisting. First of all, our executive director, Frank Sokolowski, who is the man running the show in the background. We appreciate him very much. Zach Burley, you will notice that he has something that says tech or help by his name. If you are having some sort of technical issue, please chat to him. We also have with us this evening Apex Vice Chair Jackie Jones, who will be helping with getting information into the chat for you to see. Elaine Oakall is also here this evening. She is our Wake Regional Vice Chair. She will be helping me ask some questions to these wonderful candidates. We also have Stephen Hill, who is our secretary, who is hanging out and ready to roll if we need some help with him. And finally, we have Brandy Brown, our first vice chair. She will be the timekeeper for this evening. We are so glad to see you. The first thing I would like to do is to say some quick hellos to each of the candidates. Tonight's program will be in 2 sessions, and session 1 will be for our judges and session 2 will be for our DA candidates. Candidates, when I call your name, what I want you to do is say hello. You have about 30 seconds to just introduce yourself really quickly, and then we'll move on to the next. So we are going to start this evening with a big hello to Ms. Bedford, Ms. Jennifer Bedford. Make sure you unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Jennifer Bedford. Thank you for making the time this evening to listen to what Chris and Sean and I have to say. Participating in your government this way is one of those small things that's really a very big thing. As my dad says, you are what you do. I have dedicated myself to protecting people, giving children a voice, and making the law more fair. I'm raising 2 boys in downtown Apex, and I believe that children are the best part of every day. I'm an attorney, an advocate, an advisor, and I am Army strong.
Time.
I'm really proud to be your candidate.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bedford. Next, Mr. Brooks, if you will.
Good evening. I laughed because I felt like I was in an appellate court right there when I heard time really quickly. So I'll go short and sweet. But again, my name is Chris Brooks, and I'd appreciate your support tonight. And I appreciate your support in the primary coming up and early voting. But I really, as Jennifer said, I appreciate your time coming out here tonight and going away from your work or your family and other matters and hearing what we have to say. Thank you for your time and support. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And finally, Mr. Ramkaran Singh. Sean Ramkaran Singh, how are you this evening? And make sure you unmute.
Hi, I'm Sean Ramkaran Singh, and I'm a resident of Wake County. I live in Morrisville. I want to echo what Jennifer and Chris said. We really appreciate y'all spending your evening, at least for the next 30 minutes or so with us. It's always important to have voters be educated and hear what candidates have to say. So I really do appreciate it. And I think we have 3 fine candidates running for this position. So I think Wake County will be happy with either one of us or any one of us 3. So thank you for taking the time out tonight.
And thank you so much for helping me pronounce your name correctly, Ramkaran Singh.
You got it.
Thank you. Next, I would like to welcome Mr. Chetson. Mr. Chetson, how are you this evening?
Great. I'm doing well. Thank you very much. My name is Damon Chetson. I've been a criminal defense attorney in Wake County for the last 12 years. I live in Raleigh with my wife, Catherine, and I'm proud to announce that I was endorsed today by the Color of Change PAC, last week by Real Justice PAC, and this week by the AFL-CIO of North Carolina to be your next Wake County District Attorney.
Fantastic. And Mr. Sokolowski, if you could please put up Mr. Chetson's slide. Thank you so much. There you go. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chetson. Next, we have Ms. Freeman. Ms. Freeman, how are you this evening?
Thank you for having us this evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Yeah, I've been proud to serve as your elected district attorney, going on 7 years now. And prior to that, as your elected clerk of court, and certainly appreciate the role that all of you who are active in the party play, having been a former Democratic Party chair here in Wake County. But look forward to the opportunity to talk to you this evening about the importance of this race, the things we are doing, both to make sure that our community is safe, but also to make sure that we are making significant strides in improving the fair administration of justice here in Wake County. And I hope at the end of the evening, you'll just support me for yet another term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Freeman. All right, so I'm going to quickly go over what our agenda and our format will be. Again, we will begin with our district judge for 10F Seat 1. One of the things that Wake County is very committed to during this election cycle, we are leaning hard into our judicial races. We had a terrible loss last time at our Supreme Court level, but also at several levels all over, up and down the court system. So we are putting some special emphasis on our judicial races because for whatever reason, these races often get ignored and they are incredibly important. So that will be our first. Our second half will be with our DA candidates, and we are so proud to have them here. Each of the candidates will be asked the same question. They'll have to answer it. So for our our district judge candidates, there are 4 questions that they will each have 2 minutes to respond to. They have been provided the topics, not the questions, ahead of time. We did do a random drawing to see who would go first, and whoever goes first gets to go last during the closing statements. The closing statements will also be 2 minutes. Candidates, what you can expect is for one of us to read the question completely with the background and the question itself, and then read the question a second time. You can expect the question to be put into the chat. If you need us to repeat something, we will, and it will be 2 minutes. You will get a 15-second warning as you are getting close to the end, so listen out for that. For our beginning, this will be the order of questions. Mr. Ram Karan Singh will start us off, followed by Mr. Brooks, followed by Ms. Bedford. And what this means is that Mr. Ram Karan Singh will go last during the closing statements. So hopefully we are all ready to go, and I will begin by reading the first question. The topic is accessibility of information. For the Walkaday resident, finding easy to understand information across the different levels of our judicial system is very difficult. For example, even on the North Carolina courts site, finding the names of judges and other court officials is challenging. Also, individual counties can have disparate time frames for court, all day or half day, and judges have the flexibility to decide which cases are heard first. Further, it's not uncommon for plaintiffs, defendants, and witnesses to end up in the wrong building or wrong courtroom because of a change in venue or time, and then spend an entire day in court without being heard by a judge. In your opinion, why is information accessibility so challenging within our court system? And as a district court judge, what improvements would you like to see that will help residents successfully navigate a court date? The question one more time. In your opinion, why is information accessibility so challenging within our court system? And as a district court judge, what improvements would you like to see to help residents successfully navigate a court date? Mr. Ramkaran Singh, you will begin first. As soon as you start, the 2 minutes will begin.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. So first off, court dates, that is a big problem, especially for for people who have multiple court dates. They get them confused. They have different times for different courts. So it's important that I would say at their first appearance that they have a printout of the time and date of when they need to be and what courtroom they actually need to be in. Second, there is a phone-in system, but it's not very well advertised where defendants can put their information in and they will receive a text or a phone call that will relay their court date and what time it will be. Finally, we need to advertise better that I don't think the everyday person understands that AOC does have a system in place where you can type in your name and what county you're in, and you will get your court dates, what charges you have, and they have it for the civil calendars as well. What time you'll be in. You can actually pull up the dockets and find out which judge you'll be, how long the docket will be, how many cases are on, so you can plan that, well, there's 100 cases on that day. I'm going to have to probably be there all day. They'll say all that information, but I've been doing criminal defense close to 20 something years, and I don't think I have one client who knew about that was a part of AOC until I informed them of that. So ideally, we want to get this information. It is out there. Obviously, each county is different, but we're going to focus in on Wake County, and they have a morning and afternoon session. So obviously, if you have a court date, you might not know if it's an AM case or a PM case. There's different district courts going on, so you don't know if you're on the second floor, third floor, or what have you, or which courtroom. So if they could get access to those websites and the text system, I think that would help them make their court dates. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, next up, Mr. Brooks, same question. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am, I think I got it. And to me, the answer to that question is the number of cases and the different types of cases. And in Wake County, we have a situation where sometimes you have two different courthouses, and people I've seen numerous times go to one courthouse when they're supposed to be in the other courthouse. It gets complicated, and I can understand that, but based on, whether you have a criminal case, a family law case, you've got it just every different type of the huge amount of people we have. So I can see that. And just like Sean was talking about, there is a system on AOC. I use it every day. I used it a couple times today. But that system isn't perfect. There are times when a case that you have, when you look it up, whether it's criminal or civil, I've had to do both of them, that it's not on that counter because it's been moved. What solution? I'm hoping with the more technology that AOC has, with some of the changes that are coming in the years to come, kind of progressing throughout the state, some of that will be addressed. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be an access system where a person can individually go to the AOC website and look up their name to see if they can try to find what kind of courtroom or what kind of case. Sean was right. They have it for criminal cases, certain inquiries that you can do on that, and that gets done. But to be able to further develop that, and I'm hoping with the new technologies that Tyler Technologies is bringing to AOC that we can improve that. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a person actually coming to the courtroom and sometimes looking around. And I hate to say that, but with the technology we have, that's it. And for attorneys, it's one thing because we have some experience looking into the cases and kind of figure out where we need to go. But for individuals, I was in court yesterday with an individual who was pro se, and it took him a while to figure out where to go. So I understand their concern, and hopefully the technology will improve with time. Okay. Well, anyhow, it's an issue that hopefully we can work together with the bar, with the judiciary, and take into consideration some of individuals out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, Ms. Bedford, you are next. And before I give it to you, what is AOC?
Administrative Office of the Courts.
Fantastic. And what is pro se?
That would be an individual who is not represented by an attorney.
Fantastic. Thank you for that clarification. All right. Would you like for me to repeat the question, or are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay, great.
There is a huge level of very reasonable frustration with citizens of Wake County because of how confusing the court system is. There's a lack of consistency, there's a lack of predictability. I've spoken to people who've left the courthouse and asked them what happened, and they can't tell you. They say they went to traffic court, there was an improper something, there was a prayer for something. They're not really sure what exactly they pled to. They weren't really sure what the impact would be on their insurance. The numbers of pro se people without attorneys in district court are very high. I was a prosecutor for 7 years. For 7 years, I was in the courtroom, in the courthouse. In district court alone, I handled traffic court, criminal district court, domestic violence court, juvenile court, driving while impaired court, worthless check court when that was a thing. We have non-officer courts. Due to the size of the courtrooms, the size of the dockets, the size of the courthouse, it is very difficult for people to even gauge what time they should leave their home to make it to court. And then they're really not sure. Are they going to take care of the matter on the first day? Are they going to speak to an attorney? Are they going to speak with the judge? And we should do better. I believe that our judicial officials need to also be teachers. It is very important. As a guardian ad litem, I, even as an attorney, am participating on behalf of foster care children, and hearings happen in hallways. The children who would like to know what's going on, would like to participate in their own custody cases, it's very difficult for them to even follow the process with an advocate. I have high hopes for technology. We have a court date notification system. We've gone further with victims' rights about victims being notified what courtroom to be in, but there is more smart technology ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, we will move on to topic 2. Ms. Elaine Okal will be asking this question. The order for this question will be as follows: Mr. Brooks, Ms. Bedford, and Mr. Ram Karan Singh. All right, Elaine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be on judicial philosophy. The term activist judge has become popular in right-wing media over the past few years. Their message is that decisions they dislike, such as striking down laws restricting access to abortion, amount to legislating from the bench. The recent historic confirmation of Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has only added more voices to the conversation about activist judges. With that, the idea of judicial philosophy has become a hyper-partisan talking point for the GOP, although most people outside of the legal profession only have a vague understanding of what it means. How do you think this larger conversation affects jurists, the public, and the administration of justice? Again, the question: how do you think this larger conversation affects jurists, the public, and the administration of justice? Mr. Brooks?
Wait, y'all gave some interesting questions here. As I'm looking over this, I'm thinking, I thought maybe the question would be, how do I see myself? But I guess the answer to that question is going to be, a lot of times when I'm talking about things, I'll talk with my wife and see what she says about it, what she thinks. And she goes, Chris, don't talk in legal terms. Just explain to me what's going on. And I think when people see things about a judge's philosophy, whether it's conservative or liberal or moderate, it's the one that the judicial activist kind of gets more media points for some people, and it could be positive or negative. But what do people do? I think people should be able to rely on a judge, and I think a judge should take out those philosophies from their job, especially as a district court judge, because it's a district court judge's job to follow the laws put in place. And we, as district court judges, we have the statutes, we have case law that direct us, and there are some instances where there will not be a statute on point. that we can't follow. There will not be case law on point. So at that time, I think it's the role of the judge to look at, but what did the legislature or what did the courts intend when this rule of this statute came out? That to me is where some kind of judicial activism comes in, but it's not the term activism that I think that is really important. It's a judge doing their job to interpret the law in front of them and to best apply it. But in the media, what Republicans are doing in a lot of cases is they're trying to go against a judge who is trying just to do their job at the end of the day. The conversation to me for all judges would be, have they been impartial? Have they been fair? And have they listened to all sides? Because to me, that's what a judge is supposed to do, taking politics out of the courtroom, especially as a district court judge. It's important to follow the law and to apply the best that you can and listen to the attorneys and the parties.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Bedford, would you like me to read the question again?
No, I think I have it.
All right.
I find this question very salient. I've spent the last 7 years working for the General Assembly, teaching legislators about criminal law, criminal procedure. And as you know, the law has become very politicized. Specifically, I think the partisan politics and the fear mongering has done a lot to hurt the integrity of our court system. And there is a perception that you will walk into court and you will not be treated fairly. You will be treated based on your political preferences. It was surprising for many members in the 7 years that I've worked for the General Assembly to realize that I don't know what party many of them belong to. There is an assumption, given our political state, that people are wearing blue or red on their chests. I have never believed that the law should be partisan. I am only echoing what Chris said, what Governor Cooper says, what Judge Lucy Inman says, that politics should be left on the courthouse steps. During the interpretation of the law, you look at the plain meaning, you may look at legislative intent, although honestly, we have very few statutes where there is a strictly stated legislative intent by our General Assembly. Stalking, domestic violence protective orders, and sex offender registry are a couple that actually do state what the legislature's intent. Otherwise, as attorneys, we're taught to look at the plain meaning of the law and then to respect the precedent. Precedent creates predictability, consistency, a more fair and balanced court. I believe that the individuals who say things like the activist judge are
10 seconds
scaring people because fear is a motivator.
Thank you, Ms. Bedford. Mr. Ramkaran Singh, would you like me to repeat the question? Or you
No,
got it?
I believe I have it. And I'm going to, first off, I'm going to agree with Chris and Jennifer on this. Politics should not and will not, if I'm on the bench, come before me. Our job, and especially district court, we need everybody who comes in there to know we are going to look at the law. Everybody is going to be treated equally. Everybody's going to get a fair trial. We're going to look at the law. We're going to listen to the facts. We're going to listen to the witnesses for both sides. And then we will make a fair and just decision based on nothing but the law and the facts that we've heard. Politics, one way or the other, do not come in the courtroom. That is a slippery slope. And I've seen judges who have agendas. And you know what's going to happen in certain cases, and people will not be treated fairly. And that will not happen if I'm elected to district court position of being a judge. Everyone will be treated fairly and with compassion. People are scared coming in there. They don't want to go in front of a judge who has a political agenda ahead of them or personal goals. They want to be treated fairly, with kindness, and know they got a fair trial in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, it's back to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. O'Call. All right, topic 3 is Diversity in the legal profession. The order will be Ms. Bedford, Mr. Ram Karan Singh, and Mr. Brooks. And here it goes. In North Carolina, 22% of the population is African American, yet only 9% of the lawyers in the state are African American. Similarly, only 1% of lawyers in the state are Asian, compared to 3% of the population, and less than 1% are Hispanic or Latinx, although the community makes up 10% of the state's population. Here's the question. What do you think the legal profession can do to encourage lawyers of more diverse backgrounds and practice areas to consider service on the bench? So once again, what do you think the legal profession can do to encourage lawyers of more diverse backgrounds and practice areas to consider service on the bench? Ms. Bedford, when you're ready.
Certainly the idea of diversity on the bench has been well discussed over the last few weeks. And as happy as I am about the progress that we are making, I share a lot of people's concerns and frustrations that it's 2022 and we are still talking about the first African-American justice, female justice on the Supreme Court. I feel like we should do better. When I was in the Army, I was so impressed by the diversity of the people you are surrounded by. Unless you are surrounded with diversity, you are doing yourself a disservice. As we diversify the bench, we increase the court's confidence. We increase the fair and balanced representation of our people. And I believe that judges should, in fact, reflect the community that they serve. And here in the Triangle, we have a very diverse community. Whether it's racially, ethically, religious preferences, we have a good cross-section of the world. As we move forward, I believe that bar activities, I'm a appointee to our bench to bar committee, and I think it is a fantastic microcosm where you can encourage especially younger lawyers to step up. And I feel like as members of the legal community, I had never personally met an attorney before I was admitted to law school. So as we mentor undergraduate students and law students, we need to encourage them to reach as high as they possibly can. Recently, our judge, Josephine Carr Davis in Durham, was interviewed, and she talked about being an African-American female as a Superior Court judge and how happy people are. Not that they believe she will be any easier on them. They just like her as they see themselves in her.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. Next, Mr. Ram Karan Singh, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. What do you think the legal profession can do to encourage lawyers of more diverse backgrounds and practice areas to consider service on the bench?
Okay, well, the easy answer that my opponents might not like is to elect me and they'll have a face. But seriously, what we need to do, I believe the key is mentorship. The older attorneys need to mentor. There's every 6 months, we have new attorneys in the courtroom, attorneys that have no idea how to build a practice, how to get clients, how to even operate in a courtroom. So what we need to do is take them aside, especially minorities, and help them and tell them, look, you can do whatever and be whatever, and you can be on that bench one day. But we need a plan. How are you going to get there? You got to walk before you can run. So what you do is you mentor them, you help them get those cases. You have patience with them. You take steps, you have them try misdemeanor cases, help with some of the smaller courts, and then you move them on. They can maybe second chair and help you with capital level cases or high level felonies. One of my good friends, he's Judge David Hall in Durham. When he first started, he came, I believe it was about 2007, 2008. I talked to him. He was a new attorney. And at that time, he didn't know how to get clients. So I had helped him get on the indigent defense list, where you can get appointed when the public defender's office has a conflict, and you can start trying cases that way. And that's how he began his career. And then in 2018, he ran for judge in Durham County and was elected. So he had started from a person with no experience, and just by getting on that list and working hard, and he went to different jobs, but he made it. And he's an African-American gentleman who's excelling in Durham County Court. So I think we need more mentorship. And again, I'll just say, if you elect me, that'll help too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next, Mr. Brooks, do you need me to repeat the question?
I think I've got it. I appreciate it. Now, I think the three of us are going to agree on a lot of things tonight, but I think Sean's last statement, we might disagree about a little bit, but I tease. To me, I have a person who has kind of been an example of that. I have a colleague who used to have the office right beside me, and I watched her, I'll call her on her now because that's appropriate. She used to mentor kids at an early age, from elementary school all the way up. And now she's a district court judge. Ashley Dunstan, Judge Dunstan, is a perfect example of what needs to happen is one way for this to happen. Judge Dunstan used to work right beside me in the AG's office, and now she's a judge. But what she did is she was always mentoring kids and starting early, from elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. If you see her on Facebook or anything like that, you will see that she was doing this thing this weekend or that thing that weekend, talking, because the earlier you get kids started, of all backgrounds, but you get them started, they realize anybody can do this. Our newest justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, kids will look up to her and see that they can do it. So like your parents could tell you, you could always be president if you just try. And that's the thing. If you start early on, you get kids building in that, and then they realize they can do it. And the second thing is mentorship programs. I've seen that worked and come to fruition for so many people, because they come in, they start working, they start building, and you're able to push that person up to achieve whatever they want to do in life. And I think our office is doing something. The AG's office is really pushing for, looking for people for different backgrounds to kind of get them in, to try to develop the most diversified background for all of us. And in doing that, you bring people. Okay, you bring people in and you be able to push them up and help them achieve what they want in life. But it's all about education and mentoring.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brooks. Okay, we will be moving to topic 4 in just a moment. And with the time, I'm checking the time, we are going to switch gears a little bit. You will each have 1 minute, just 1 minute, to answer topic 4 instead of the 2 minutes. And then following topic 4, we will have closing statements. So I'm turning it over now to Ms. Opal, who needs to unmute, and we will get it rolling. 1 minute. All right, Ms. Opal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this next one is on conflicts of interest. Our order is Mr. Ramkaran Singh, Ms. Bedford, Mr. Brooks. Rule 2.11 of the American Bar Association's Model Code of Judicial Conduct says that judges should recuse themselves in any proceeding in which the judge's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Some common reasons for recusals are having a family member who is party to the case, having a financial interest in the outcome of the case, or the judge has previously made public statements outside of a court proceeding or opinion about a particular result or rule. The question, how will you handle issues of conflict of interest? Are there any specific types of cases that you know of now, due to your previous experience or practice, that you would require to recuse yourself? Again, how will you handle issues of conflict of interest? Are there any specific types of cases that you know of now due to your previous experience or practice that would require you to recuse? Mr. Ramkaran Singh?
Thank you. Well, I don't even know if I'll need my full minute. Basically, I don't believe there's any type of case just on its face I would recuse myself from without knowing who the parties are, or what the subject matter of the litigation is. So obviously, if it's someone I know, someone I represented in the past, a family member, or I have any type of interest, if it's a civil case, obviously I would recuse myself, let the parties know, and have talk to the chief district court judge and have another judge assigned, or if we have to, bring somebody in. That happens in court a lot when attorneys are the defendants. The judges all recuse themselves and we bring in a special judge for that case. But no special topic or subject matter would I right away recuse myself from. And so that's basically it for that one.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bedford, would you like me to read the question again?
No, I think I've got it.
Okay,
I believe that, especially in district court, I dealt with 500 traffic cases in a morning. So from an attorney's perspective, from a judge's perspective, it may be difficult to identify the conflict of interest until an individual is in front of you. I believe, though, that it's very important for us to police ourselves. When a judge fails to recuse themselves, they are the ones who make the determination of whether they can be fair. It damages everyone's integrity. It damages the integrity of the system. For instance, if you have a Supreme Court justice who chooses to hear a case that his father's a member of, that causes lawyers, judges, lay people to have severe doubts about what is the court system doing for them. I believe, given the fact that I am a guardian ad litem and I am involved in some family law matters in regards to the foster care children that I advocate for, obviously I would have to recuse myself from their cases and any other cases that their families are involved in. That is right off the only conflict of interest I can think of.
thank you. Mr. Brooks, would you like me to read the question again, or are you good?
I'm fine, thank you, ma'am. To me, it's not only the actual conflict of interest, to me, it's also the appearance of a conflict of interest, because it's a judge's reputation and honesty that he or she holds that's most important. I've got no problem with recusing myself from a case that there's an actual or potential, because it's about the court. It's not just about me, it's about the actual robe, it's about the courtroom. And that's something that should be protected. As to specific cases, I'm not aware of any type of cases that I would have in district court that my prior client DOT would be in front of me. But even if there were, I would recuse myself. But to me, it's about the impression that you have to the public, to the attorneys and everybody else, to be impartial.
Thank you. Madam
Thank you.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Ms. Okal. All right, now it's time for the closing statements for our 3 judicial candidates. The order will be as follows: Mr. Brooks, Ms. Bedford, and Mr. Ramkaran Singh. Each of you have 2 minutes to make your closing remarks. Mr. Brooks, we will begin with you, and as soon as you begin, the timer will begin.
Thank you. Make sure I got myself unmuted there. Sorry. I think it's to be a judge, you've got to give equal access and opportunity to every person. As a judge, I will do that. I will be fair and impartial for all matters, from criminal matters to civil matters to juvenile matters to family law matters. That's what I will do. Since 1998, I've been doing criminal and civil cases for the state of North Carolina. Not only do I have this trial experience in both the civil and criminal fields, I also have appellate experience. And people go, Chris, why is appellate experience relevant? Because when you have appellate experience, you will see not only happens in the trial court, it also happens up and down all the way up to our United States Supreme Court. And when you see that, you're able to build on things that a judge maybe should or shouldn't do, or what should or shouldn't happen in a courtroom. And I think that's really important if you're going to run a courtroom, is to understand, that might seem good to the parties right now, but if this case goes up, it's not. And you need to have that kind of experience when it comes to being a judge. One of the things I think is really important, over the years, I've been asked many, many times to come do continuing education classes. And most of the time it's been by members of the defense bar. And you say, well, Chris, why is that important? It's important because if members of the defense bar ask you to come speak at their CLEs, that tells you they respect your opinion and they will listen to it. Now, we might not always agree, but they're listening to it. And having the respect from members of the bar is very important. And the last thing I'll point out is having a family, to me, is something crucial that I think everyone, many years ago, my boss told me, Chris, I don't think you should be a judge until you have a family. And I think having a family, being married, and watching my kids grow brings so much more knowledge to being a judge. It's not legal, but it's an implication of life and understanding how life happens and how circumstances could happen, and the interest of a child sometimes. And I think until you have a child, you may not understand that. But I think given all the things, the experience I have in life from trial in both civil and criminal and appellate experience, I think I bring, thank you, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brooks. All right, Ms. Bedford, you are next.
So I mentioned that my dad says you are what you do. I appreciate this because it's true. You're not what you say, you're not what you want or what you have. You actually are what you do. And although my dad's retired, he is a teacher and he's taught me a lot. Dad was an all-Army boxing champion. After the Army, he went to college on the GI Bill, and then he taught high school English. But every winter, his boxer's hands ached. So when he saw a flyer in the teacher's lounge recruiting young male teachers to move down south and teach high school equivalency, he jumped on it. And that's how my dad started a 30-year career teaching within the prison system. He gave inmates the skills necessary to start a new life. I called it compassion. He calls it common sense. My dad taught me the power of empowering other people, the value of hope when hope seems lost. And most of all, he taught me that we do not throw people away. Dad's lessons have charted the course of my life. When I was shocked to find out that the largest population living in domestic violence shelters are children, I went to work advocating for them. Because Dad taught me we don't turn a blind eye when people are in need. Following September 11th, when I set aside college and I enlisted in the Army, I did it partially because Dad taught me a deep commitment to service and to community. After law school, when I spent 7 years in the courtroom as a prosecutor, I worked long days and long dockets because Dad taught me to run towards hard work, not away from it. And later, when I was prosecuting homicides in Superior Court and I picked juries and I looked for fair jurors, the kind of jury any one of us would want if we were accused of a crime, because Dad taught me that you treat people the way that you would like to be treated. After the 7 years in the courtroom, when I took the opportunity to improve the law, I like to think that Dad is proud of me because we make a place better than how we found it.
So much, Ms. Bedford. All right, Mr. Ram Karan Singh, you have 2 minutes to close out your case.
Great. Thank you. First, I want to thank everybody for putting us on, and Chris and Jennifer. It's great seeing you guys, and I wish you all luck and best wishes. Maybe coming second and third, but it's still good. But seriously, I've been practicing in North Carolina since spring in 1999. And from then till today, and it'll go on, I've been in the courthouse. That's what I do. I'm a courthouse lawyer. I've been in civil courts. I've been in the family courts. My main practice is criminal defense. And most of that is with indigent defendants, people who cannot afford an attorney. That has always been my passion. And that is the majority of my caseload now. I'm on the capital trial list as well. I handle high-level felonies, low-level felonies. I've handled it all, from a registration to a homicide. The biggest thing I've noticed is the fear. Nobody is excited unless they get married to go into the courthouse. And you can watch their faces when they look and they see a certain judge. I want to change that. I want people to understand and to build a reputation of they will always get a fair shot in my courtroom. There will always be compassion in that courtroom. This is district court. We're not running for superior court. We're not dealing with homicides. There really is not many cases where you have to impose an active sentence anytime in district court. That's DUIs, that's a whole different sentencing chart. And there are minimum active sentences with some DUIs. But for the most part, we should be looking at ways to keep people out of jail and to know they're going to come in and get a fair trial and be treated with respect and kindness. Thank you. And I appreciate your support.
Thank you so much. All right, we are getting ready to transition into the DA's portion, but before that, I would like to thank our candidates this evening, Mr. Brooks, Ms. Bedford, and Mr. Ram Karan Singh. Mr. Sokolowski, if you could please put their slides up one last time, hold it at about 5 seconds each so folks can see. There is our information on Ms. Bedford, Mr. Brooks, and Mr. Ram Karanstein. All right, at this time, we will now move into our DA forum. Let me quickly go over what the format will be for our 2 DA candidates. There will be 5 prepared questions at 2 minutes each. The DA candidates were provided the topics, not the questions. At the end, our DA candidates will have 2 minutes each for closing statements. We randomly, just like we randomly chose who went first for session 1, for session 2, we randomly chose who was going first. And for this, Mr. Chetson will start and Ms. Freeman will go second, which means at the end, Ms. Freeman will go first and Mr. Chetson will go last. So at this time, if you would get ready, our candidates who just completed your portion, please mute yourselves. And we will start with the first topic. The first topic is low-level drug offenses. And again, this will start with Mr. Chetson. I will read the background and then I will read the question nugget 2 times. In North Carolina, prison time for first-time offenders on drug possession charges is a real possibility. For example, the possession of fewer than 100 tablets of Valium leads to 2 years in jail, while greater than 100 tablets can carry a sentence of 5 years. Possession of more than half an ounce of marijuana has a sentence of 2 years. Yet, multiple studies, including a large Pew Trust study in 2018, showed that there is no relationship between imprisonment and drug use. Here's the question. What do you think is the most effective way to deal with low-level drug possession cases? Once again, what do you think is the most effective way to deal with low-level drug possession cases? Mr. Chetson, when you begin, you will have 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. And my name is Damon Chetson, and I'm honored to be here. I wanted to I don't want to comment on the times that you gave in terms of imprisonment, because having done this for 12 years, I'm not sure that I completely agree with those terms of imprisonment. But let me get to the meat of the question, which is, what would I do about low-level drug cases? I have committed to not prosecuting adult use quantities of marijuana for a starter. That is all amounts up to 1.5 ounces in North Carolina, which is a misdemeanor. Secondarily, I have also committed to not misuse our trafficking statutes, which create mandatory minimum sentences for people who have possessed certain quantities of opiates, certain quantities of LSD, exceeding 100 tablets and so forth. The sum and substance of it is that it is true that these are oftentimes, except where there are sales, oftentimes issues of addiction and mental health problems. And so I have committed, and we will talk about this a little bit later, but I've committed to focusing on ensuring that the people who have brought into the court system on charges related to drug possession, where there is clear addiction issues, have access to an expanded deferral or diversion program. One of the problems we have in Wake County under our current elected DA is we have an approach which favors the criminal prosecution of people for adult use quantities of marijuana. Last year, during COVID, the Wake County District Attorney prosecuted 2 folks to jury trials in marijuana cases where the juries in Wake County decided that those people were not guilty. In my view, it is a tremendous waste of resources. Second, with respect to marijuana, it is clear that while people across racial groups smoke marijuana at the same rates, people from our Black and brown communities are more unfairly prosecuted for those crimes, in part because they use them oftentimes in cars. So I would stop prosecuting the adult use quantity of marijuana.
Thank you very much. And timekeeper, if you would please give a 10 or 15-second warning so that our speakers have a little bit of a heads up. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Freeman, you are up. Would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay. I have the question. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about these important issues. I think it's really important, first and foremost, that people understand exactly what is going on. And so, from that, one of the things I want people to understand in our community is that when it comes to low level drug crimes, and in particular possession of marijuana, our judicial system, our law enforcement has long moved towards citing people to court, not arresting them. People are not going to prison on, possession of low level amounts of marijuana. But what has been true, and has been true for over 20 years in this county, is that when people are charged with violating the law when it comes to possession of marijuana or other types of use amounts of substances, we send them into a collaborative program we have had for all that time with Southlight, one to try and stress drug education, and also to try and head off any kind of addiction issues. I mean, we need to look at what are all the other types of things coming through the court system. And what we know is that too often addictions feed all kinds of other types of criminal behavior. And so, our office has been committed and remains committed, and I have worked diligently to separate out those who might be trafficking drugs in our community from those who might have real behavioral health issues. I think it is critically important that we learn and we continue to divert away from the criminal justice system things that are really behavioral health issues. And so whether that is a mental health issue or a substance use disorder issue, I have chaired over the last 5+ years a group, the Directors Group, which is an advisory group to our county commission. It is a cross-agency collaboration that looks up more expansive resources to treat behavioral health issues. This past year, I just recently joined with Family Resource Center of the South Atlantic and Apex Police Department and Southlight again in seeking a free arrest diversion program for people with opioid addictions. Let me be clear to say that, we do not want addiction, but we do want to treat it in a way that makes sure that people can live successfully and stably within our community. And that has been my commitment. That's what we've been doing in this community. And what I have done over the last 7 years is try to find ways to expand the ways in which we can do that so that we don't end up with people who, turn to other lines of criminal activity in order to feed the addiction. And then when it comes to trafficking offenses, I mean, quite frankly, we take a hard line on people who are selling drugs in our community. I believe it is one of the reasons why we.
I'm sorry, Kevin, I muted. I was not sure if I wasn't heard.
You weren't. We couldn't hear you. All right. Sorry about that, Ms. Freeman. Time. Okay, so thank you for that. And for the next one, Ms. Okal will be asking the question. The topic will be juvenile justice. It will begin with Ms. Freeman, and then following her, Mr. Chetson will answer. Ms. Okal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have juvenile justice with Ms. Freeman and Mr. Chetson. Currently, North Carolina has a jail diversion program, but it has limited applications. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, everyone placed under this program must have a mental illness. Youth.gov and interagency collaboration at the federal level reports that a significant number of juveniles who are in the legal system are there for relatively minor crimes and could be served by alternative programs if properly implemented. The question is, do you support diversion or mentor programs for first-time offenders ages 18 to 25? If so, what would your office do to support such programs? Ms. Freeman?
Thank you for the question. First, I think, it is important to note that Wake County District Attorney's Office has more deferral programs than any other district attorney's office in the state. Secondly, one of the very first things that I did when I came to the district attorney's office was to work in conjunction with our school system and with Alliance Mental Health, which is our mental health provider for people on Medicaid. And to set up a pre-arrest diversion program for low-level offenses that were at the schools. And that was prior to the raise the age legislation going into effect. I think it's very important, and that's why we have as many diversion programs as we do, to give people who make mistakes, and many of the people who come through the court system are people who have made a bad mistake, nonviolent, low-level offenses. People need to have a second chance. They need to have the opportunity to earn getting that off of their record and being able to return to the community where they can live stably. And for me, that has been part of my mission of public safety, is trying to make sure people have access to those programs.
Thank you. Mr. Chetson, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first issue is not the number of diversion programs. I would agree that we have a significant number of diversion programs in Wake County. The problem is that we don't have the applicability of those diversion programs to large communities of people who really need them. At a prior forum, Ms. Freeman noted that the mental health diversion program, about which she described and is proud that she set up, only has in it at any one time 30 people. It is clear, if anyone goes to the Wake County Justice Center, that there are more than 30 people that have significant mental health problems that go through our criminal system. And it is important for those folks to have access, not just to have access to those programs, not just to have a large number of programs. So I would expand access to the programs. I would also train the Wake County Assistant District Attorneys to identify and to flag folks who are suitable for various programs. The second component of that is, while there are certain fee waiver programs in place in Wake County, that is to say, if you cannot afford the cost of the program or the court costs, those in some cases can be waived. That is a difficult process. And any defense attorney who is in here tonight will tell you that they have sat in the Wake County District Courts during the past 7 years and watched as people have failed programs simply because they were poor. That is, they had the commitment to participate. They wanted to participate in a deferral or treatment program, but they lacked the funds. And when they come back, the assistant district attorney says, well, they have not complied, and therefore they get a conviction, which then hurts their ability to get work, hurts their ability to stay in housing. So the key is, one, to expand the number of people eligible who can participate in the programs, and two is to increase or decrease the cost of those programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chetson. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Okal. All right, this will be topic 3, and Mr. Chetson, you will lead this off. Topic 3 is immigration. 13% of people living in Wake County are immigrants, A quarter of them do not have a high school diploma. The majority of immigrants in Wake County are from Central America, and the second largest group of people are from Southeast Asia. 1/3 of immigrants speak Spanish at home. These factors all make addressing the needs of immigrants important to ensure equitable experience with the judicial system. Here's the question. What can your office do to create an open and trusting relationship with immigrant communities in Wake County? One more time. What can your office do to create an open and trusting relationship with immigrant communities in Wake County? Mr. Chetson.
My sister is married to a woman who is an immigrant to this country. She is of Spanish and Mexican background, and my nephew is of Hispanic. And so this strikes to the heart, as I think it does for many people in our community. First issue is that I would expand the use of the youth certification. Youth certification is a designation or a certification that can be issued by the Wake County District Attorney where there is a victim or a witness to a crime who may not be here with documentation and who may be afraid or may be eligible or subject to deportation. It allows that person to remain in the community to ensure that the person who committed the crime is held accountable. Unfortunately, the Wake County District Attorney has been slow and unresponsive, and our immigration attorneys will tell you that they've had a very difficult time in simply getting responses back as to youth certifications. The second issue is that we have a deferral and diversion program in our domestic violence programs and in our domestic violence courtrooms and other courtrooms. The problem with these deferral and diversion programs is that they often require a written confession by the defendant in order to enter into the program. And lately, the Wake County District Attorney, there has been talk that the Wake County District Attorney would shift to conditional discharge. This effectively would mean that people who are the defendants in a case that are low level, where they are eligible for treatment and they would like to participate in treatment to hold the family together, are now subject to deportation even if they complete the treatment, because ICE will take that confession and use it to deny them permanent residence in the United States. It is important when we are addressing crime in our community that we allow people from all parts of our community to participate in the criminal justice system. It makes us all safer.
So much, Mr. Chetson. Ms. Freeman, you are up. Shall I repeat the question or do you have it?
I've got it. Thank you. Unfortunately, too often our immigrant community turns out to be victims of crime because people know that they may not be willing to come forward because they're scared. And so one of the things that we have worked very diligently to do, both in building relationships with that community. I've participated in events at the consulate. I have been to numerous churches over the last 7 years as panels with law enforcement to talk about, especially frankly under the prior federal presidential administration, to talk about the importance that we see in having that relationship of trust with all of our community. And I think it's really important that we have victim witness assistants who serve our victims in cases that speak Spanish. We have worked to try and make sure that we've got people who are bilingual on staff. I have multiple prosecutors on staff who are bilingual, and I think those are important steps that we can take. We are and have been working with our immigration attorneys to make sure we can streamline the U visa process and make sure that we are doing what we can as our part to offer that as a benefit to individuals who are victims of crime. But I think it's all about building trust with that community, and that's exactly what I have been doing over the last 7 years.
Thank you very much. We will now move to topic 4. Ms. Okal will read topic 4 to you. Ms. Freeman will begin. Mr. Chetson will follow. Ms. Okal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Topic 4, GOP authoritarian overreach on civil rights. With many GOP-controlled state legislatures passing extreme laws restricting abortion and LGBTQIA rights, and the U.S. Supreme Court poised to hand down rulings lessening or all-out obliterating the arguments for federal protections of these rights, how will you use your authority and discretion to protect these rights here in North Carolina? Again, how will you use your authority and discretion to protect these rights here in North Carolina? Ms. Freeman.
I think we have a responsibility not to move forward in prosecuting cases in which the law clearly runs counter to the Constitution. I am currently a named party, which happens when you serve in the official capacity as the district attorney, but in a lawsuit about statute here in North Carolina currently, and so I need to be careful about what I say about that. But I think what's important is that I have worked over the last 7 years to try and hold accountable people who abuse their authority and who abuse their power. And certainly, where we have laws that go into effect that are clearly contradictory to the Constitution, I think we have an obligation to not enforce those laws. And that would be my intent.
Thank you. Mr. Chetson, would you like me to read the question?
I think I have it. So I'm very proud that back in 2013, I represented people who were exercising their civil rights in protesting as part of Reverend Barber's Moral Monday protests up on Jones Street. And I've represented them for the last 6 or 7 years while they've been prosecuted by the Wake County District Attorney. There were clear constitutional rules that said that you had the right to exercise your First Amendment, and yet the Wake County District Attorney prosecuted those folks, many of whom were simply exercising their First Amendment rights. So if the principle is that the state can enforce a right or a law which clearly violates the United States Constitution, the First Amendment gave them that right. I defended their rights. Second is, I think we were talking obviously about the pro-choice issue. And in a few months, the United States Supreme Court is likely to rule that Roe v. Wade is bad law, and that suddenly a woman's right to choose how they engage in the reproductive freedom is no longer the law of the land. And I suppose at that point that Ms. Freeman, because she says if we get a supermajority in the North Carolina General Assembly and Mr. Robinson is the governor, we are going to, or a supermajority, we don't need Mr. Robinson, they can pass it over to Governor Cooper's veto, that we will then at that point have laws which make it a criminal act in North Carolina to exercise a right that people have had, women have had to exercise choice over their reproductive freedom. She will, I suppose at that point, given what she just said, go in and arrest the women or the abortion providers or the doctors. That's the principle she just articulated. I will not do that. I will exercise the discretion duly invested by the voters of Wake County not to enforce what I believe is a law that violates the principles of prosecutorial discretion. And I make that commitment because I think it's very important for the people on this call to understand that that's vitally at stake. Ms. Freeman has said repeatedly that if it's the law and the Constitution supports it in her view, that she will enforce it. I don't believe that that's the role of the Wake County District Attorney, and I will not enforce those criminal laws that interfere with a woman's right to choose.
Thank you, Mr. Chetson. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Okal. Okay, this will be our last question for the DA candidates. After this question, we will move into closing statements. After the closing statements, we will show some information about these candidates, and then we will do some thank yous and close out for the evening. Topic 5 is white collar, consumer, and cyber crimes. The order will be Mr. Chetson and then Ms. Freeman. You have 2 minutes. In 2020, companies and individuals lost an estimated $4.1 billion to cybercrimes. In addition, complaints to the FBI increased dramatically in 2020 and 2021. At the same time, consumer scams such as identity theft and fake charity donation requests are also on the rise. Here's the question. How will your office approach informing and protecting citizens against the growing threats of cybercrime, consumer scams, and criminal business practices like multi-level marketing scams? Once again, how will your office approach informing and protecting citizens against the growing threats of cyber, consumer scams, and criminal business practices such as MLM schemes? Mr. Chetson.
Yes, so the first issue is that largely those consumer protection laws are enforced by our very good Attorney General, Josh Stein. So a large percentage of that goes after the companies is done by the Department of Justice, your Department of Justice, because those crimes often go beyond counties. And so it's very difficult for the Wake County to address all of the victims of cybercrime. So that's number one. Number two is, broadly speaking, with respect to white collar crimes, which include embezzlement and other kinds of financial crimes, I will take a very aggressive approach to that. In 2018, we had a registrar of deeds in Wake County, Laura Riddick, who embezzled close to $1 million. I have previously represented as a criminal defense attorney individuals who had embezzled and caused financial loss to individuals and companies. And where the amounts approached $1 million or more, the punishments were 12 years, typically 12 years, more than a decade in prison. Laura Riddick was sentenced to just 6 years. And it wasn't me that called this a problem. It was her replacement, Judge Gilliam, who was brought in to clean up the mess that she had caused over nearly a 7-year period at the Registrar of Deeds. He also called the deal terrible, an extremely lenient deal extended by the Wake County District Attorney to Laura Riddick. It is important when we're dealing with white collar crime and consumer fraud that we address that in a very serious manner. We have a policy in Wake County for going after drug crimes, as we've previously discussed, with very harsh sentences, as the questioner mentioned. And those sentences can lead someone to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years for possession by trafficking by possession of drugs. We need to take the same approach or a stronger approach against consumer fraud.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chetson. Ms. Freeman, would you like for me to repeat the question?
That's okay. Thank you very much. First of all, Laura Riddick paid back almost $1 million and went to prison for 6 years. Mr. Chetson is not being truthful with you when he tells you that most of the people who he has prosecuted for those types of crimes have gone to prison for 12 years when they have both paid back all of the money and also gone back to prison. That was an appropriate outcome in that case. I have handled multiple embezzlement cases myself because it is important that we take those types of crimes very seriously, and we have done that. Time and time again, I have worked to hold accountable both public officials and those who serve us in a variety of capacities, accountable by making sure that we recoup what money we can and that we otherwise hold them accountable by sending them to prison. And I think that's an important step for and a stand for the district attorney to take. It's easy for Mr. Chetson to talk about what he would do. It's a different thing to actually have to do the job. It has been my honor to do that job for 7 years. As he has mentioned, Josh Stein handles a lot of the consumer protection issues, but I do think it's important in our role as district attorney, you carry a big talking stick, and certainly to do those things that you can to make sure that people are aware of the various types of fraud and situations that people can be victimized by. The last thing we want in our community is for people to fall prey to fraudsters. And so, I think it's important that we step out, we talk about what those situations are, and we try and inform people and educate them, hopefully to protect themselves.
Thank you so much, Ms. Freeman. Okay, I want to take a moment and thank both of you for being here this evening and stepping up and stepping forward. There's a lot of emotional discussion because the law is emotional a lot of times for folks who are on the receiving end, and I'm sure also for folks who are on the enforcement end. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you both. Now we will go into closing statements. Each of you will be provided 2 minutes, We will begin with Ms. Freeman, and then we will end with Mr. Chetson. So Ms. Freeman, when you're ready.
Again, just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak and be here this evening. You know, I'm sitting here in the room of my 18-year-old daughter who's off in college, and many of you who've been active in the party that long remember when I would carry her as a baby to events, you know, at the Goodwin House, and being part of the Democratic Party and active in this community. I have spent my career serving this community. I think what we do every day in the district attorney's office, both to keep our community safe, but also to continually be revising and reforming the system in a way that makes sure that it works for all of us in our community, is important to the quality of life here in Wake County. I am asking for your support again as I seek re-election this time, and I appreciate all that you have done for me over the last 20 years as I have served you in our community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Freeman. Mr. Chetson, you now have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Well, thank you. And as I said at the beginning, I am proud to live here in Raleigh with my wife, Catherine, and to have been a criminal defense attorney working in Wake County's courts. In 2020, I went with her down to downtown Raleigh to participate in some of the protests related to the murder of George Floyd. And there were a great number of folks gathered because people were concerned not just about George Floyd, but also about some of the things that have occurred in Wake County. I represented Kyron Hinton when I was an intern many moons ago at the Wake County Public Defender's Office. Kyron Hinton was beaten and had dogs sicked upon him on Yonkers Road. I mentioned that, and I mentioned also that we have the case in Raleigh of Omar Abdullah, and that is a case involving a detective for Raleigh PD who arrested folks, 15 of whom spent more than about 2.5 years in jail on fake drug charges. These are things that disparately affect us in this community, and they affect people of color. And that's not because people of color lead any worse lives than people like me. That is because we have a criminal justice system that does not account for the way in which police sometimes, many of whom are very good, but sometimes misbehave. And so back in 2020, when I went down to Wake County, Raleigh to march with the folks and to protest the killing of George Floyd. Later that week, thousands of folks got on the street, and you can go to WRL and watch the clip, marching and asking Lauren Freeman to resign. I supported Lauren Freeman when she ran for clerk of court, and also as opposed to her Democratic opponent in 2014. But unfortunately, the reforms that were promised have not been implemented. Common sense reforms, including stopping the prosecution of adult use quantities of marijuana, stopping the death penalty, can make us a safer and fairer community. Furthermore, I make this commitment to you. We have 43 DAs in Wake County. I will double the size of the office.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chetson. At this time, Mr. Sokolowski, if you could please share the slides for Mr. Chetson and Ms. Freeman so that we can view their information. There you have it. Mr. Chetson at chetson.org. And Ms. Freeman at freeman4da.com. Very well. Okay, so before we close out for the evening, I also want to take a moment to thank our judge candidates. I am really proud of you all for stepping up. And again, for some reason, society doesn't pay enough attention to the folks who are sitting on the bench unless that bench is way up there. So I know that our district judge bench is vital to just our general safety and our general ability to function as a society. And I want to thank all three of you for stepping forward. It's not easy, and you are all doing wonderfully. I would also like to take a moment to thank all of the folks who are in attendance tonight. Again, WCDP is leaning forward on our judicial races, especially our school board races and any of the House or Senate races where we need to protect vulnerable candidates. So thank you for spending your evening with us to learn about the district judge candidates, and our DA candidates, because as you can see, there's an affinity there, and it's good to know what people are thinking and how they plan to carry out justice. Finally, I'd like to give a big shout out to all of the volunteers who assisted with this program this evening. I am encouraging everyone on this call to volunteer with or donate to Wake County Democratic Party. We are the grassroots, and we have one paid employee. Everyone else is a volunteer, and we are the engine that ensures that those groups of candidates, like our district court judges, we are their caucus for them, and we are here to get that information out. Same thing for our DA candidates. At this time, also, I believe we should say farewell. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. We will play the slideshow so folks can see the information one more time. But I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening. And once again, thank you for being here.